It's wonderful to be here. Good morning. Well, good, almost noontime.
Yeah.
I'm here today with some stellar panelists, so I love to introduce them. But I think first, why don't you each have yourself introduce yourself? Because I think you probably do a better job than me. But here I have Arjun from Orderly Network.
Correct.
Mike from Douro Labs. Marco from Rev Finance, as well as Sid from Electric Capital. So why don't we start with Sid? You're the closest to me here.
Cool.
And why don't you give an introduction of yourself and your fund?
Cool. Thanks, Joyce. Appreciate it. Hey, guys. I'm Sid. I work at Electric Capital. I've been there for about a year and a half. Spent a lot of time thinking about DeFi, liquidity provisioning, tokenomics, governance, and excited to talk about DeFi with all you guys.
Awesome, Marco.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Marco, the CTO of Rev Finance. You may know Rev Finance is a top one DeFi platform on Near, but you may not know we have a professional and efficient team behind it. Yeah. Besides front and back end, we have dedicated and excellent UI UX designers. We have QA, we have testing, we have data analysis, we have product designer and researchers. So with the support of this powerful team, we are keeping evolving Rev. Yeah, thank you.
Mike.
Mike Cahill, the CEO of Douro Labs. Douro Labs is building the Pyth network. Pyth network is the largest first-party Oracle network and just announced deployment on Near yesterday. So excited to be here.
Hi everyone, Arjun, COO at Orderly Network. Orderly Network aims to be the ultimate DeFi trading Lego. We are an infrastructure and liquidity network with an order book, aiming to allow multiple dApps to be able to tap in and integrate with us and create a wide range of different financial products.
Thank you all for that introduction. I think let's start off early, kind of simple questions, and then maybe we'll get to some of the announcements that's been discussed in the last couple of days. That's super exciting. Why don't we start off with you? For Electric Capital, how are you guys thinking about the current landscape for DeFi? And within Near, I think we'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've been really early adopters of DeFi. I know beyond just investing in protocols, we spend a lot of time providing liquidity, whether it be on AMMs or lending protocols. On the Near side, spent a lot of time looking at Ref, Burrow, Orderly as well. And I think the technology that Near provides allows, a higher fidelity of services on the decentralized finance side. And I think we're excited to see what other features can be enabled. I think, with DeFi 1.0, we saw the basics of AMMs, the basics of lending, but what does the next stage look like? Is it going to be RWAs? Are institutions going to be participating? Those are kind of the things that we're looking at. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to dive more into that later.
Yeah.
And for Marco, Mike, and Arjun, for you guys as founders, what are you guys most excited about in DeFi right now? Marco, why don't you go first?
Actually, at first, I stepped into this DeFi field because I believed that DeFi could actually help startup teams as well as regular users. The most exciting thing is, of course, it's still true. It's still true. But furthermore, I realized that DeFi is driving many innovations now. For example, who benefits most from cross-chain bridge? Yes, several years ago, we only need to move assets among chains, and it seems all good at that moment. But now as the DeFi product become more and more complex, we now pursue more for message passing bridges. We not only need our assets to flow among chains, but those business logic details to be delivered among products. Yeah, so I think DeFi is actually, pushing those new technologies forward in, this critical area. That's the most exciting part, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Mike?
I'm probably the most excited about the stuff that Arjun's building. Easy to pass it down. But I think that we're at a critical point now where we should start to see kind of overnight success of on-chain perpetual markets starting to eat market share away from centralized perpetual markets. The infrastructure is probably up to snuff now. When you start looking at the kind of feature parity of like round trip times, the amount of leverage you can get, listing times, on-chain derivatives are pretty much there. Pith is powering a lot of them, and so we've seen this kind of firsthand. But the only element of it that I think is still missing that we haven't yet used to kind of grow, and like to frame that, we're at about sub 2% market share relative to Binance perps on chain. My prediction is that in a year we'll be over 10%, and I think it's all just UX. I think now you can get away with having all these features and then just improve the UX. And I think that ruthless improvement on that front, which is sufficiently easier from a technological perspective, still hard work, is going to happen. And making it fully abstracted, the DeFi experience, is what I'd hope to expect when we start to see people enter in an environment that looks and feels a little bit like Binance perps. And I think that's where we're going to get the biggest leg. And it's going to come as a surprise to everyone. And I love that about innovations where there's a whole lot of work that goes into the infrastructure, and everyone kind of complains that nothing's happening for a really long time. And then when there's that overnight success, everyone had forgotten about all that work that had gone in, and I think that we're really ready for that.
Thank you. Arjun?
Yeah, I think Mike kind of teed me up for what I'm most excited about. And that's perpetual futures on an on-chain order book. We're working really closely with partners like Pith. We're working really closely with partners like Ref. Ref have both a spot and perpetual futures order book built on top of Orderly. And what I'm excited about is teams coming together to really bring a true onboarding experience to the user. Whether it's us Orderly focusing on centralized exchange style infrastructure and experience, centralized exchange style liquidity, Oracle latency at Pith, UI and UX like Ref Finance, all coming together to really bring that true user experience to the user. Mike referenced like chain abstraction, wallet abstraction. We have fast auth on Near now. We have BOS. There's such a large multitude that can, it's a build it and they will come style mentality. And I'm really excited about the future of DeFi because we really are going to onboard a large piece. And I think we're such at the tip of the iceberg. Like you said, we're 2% of perp volumes, on-chain perp volume on Binance. I'm excited over the next 12, 18, 24 months when that can be 10, 15, 20.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question, primarily on the timeline here. I think we've seen so much progress in the last couple of years in DeFi. And now what you guys all have addressed is pushing DeFi into the next tier of trying to take over market share from centralized exchanges, right? Bridging and bringing derivatives on-chain and perpetuals on-chain. How should we think about mainstream adoption, taking it beyond just within crypto? What are you guys thinking about there, if anything at all? Or is it right now just primarily focused on really taking on the competition? Maybe Arjun, you could take that first.
So I think we are really at the very, very start of what I believe DeFi is, and a lot of us are always focused on bear markets, bull markets, different cycles over the next 12, 18 months. We're at the very, very start of multi-decade long financial change, in my opinion. So when we're talking about what are we doing to bring users, a large part of that, especially in emerging technologies, is letting time take its time.
Yep.
Right? Technology is advancing, more builders coming in, more people learning, more people failing, most importantly, to build the right type of products and protocols for users. And I think over time that's going to evolve and change. And I think that's all that we really need is continued focus in what we're doing, continued focus in building, continued focus in learning and adopting and adapting to what the customers needs, and that will happen over time.
Yeah, Mike, any thoughts there?
Yeah, very similar. I think that mainstream adoption will most likely come in the crypto markets in something like trading, because that is the primary kind of use case today that we see, and it's off-chain. And so it's kind of like if users can't eat their own dog food on DeFi, natively, then there's no real hope for the rest of it. There's obviously a whole burgeoning NFT market that could potentially do things differently. Because I come from a finance background, I tend to focus a little bit more on the DeFi. So I agree. I think that those are the Lego bricks that are most likely set up to migrate. And there's a lot there, right? The number of people that have crypto exposure is in like the hundreds of millions, but the number of people that have an active crypto wallet is in the, at best, single-digit millions. Bridging that gap, I think, is going to give us a whole lot of kind of tailwinds.
Yep, for sure. Marco, any thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a little tricky question. It depends on how we define mainstream adoption. If we mean that most of users to use our DeFi product, then I think maybe the most problem is user onboarding, apparently. But if we mean to have most of capital in our DeFi, then I vote for regulation. Yes, regulation, not security. Because security is like we tell our user, our big clients, that our product is safe, right? You will master your own money. But maybe a couple of days later, a couple of months later, there is an incident. You make yourself like an idiot, It's awkward. So regulation is totally another story. You tell your client that even if there is an incident happens, you have the ability to reclaim at least part of your assets back. So this risk is those big investors, they can predict, they can evaluate, and they are familiar with. So that's the regulation. But actually, regulation is not my territory. So I will assume that we are talking about most of users to use it. So definitely user onboarding issues.
Yeah, Sid is just nodding his head nonstop.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts I agree with. I think there are kind of 3 points. Like the first is user experience. As Mike mentioned, there are a ton of people that hold crypto, but very few people who are willing to use it in DeFi. Multiple of my friends own Bitcoin, Ethereum, various other crypto assets, but convincing them to get MetaMask, type in a new RPC, connect to a new chain, goes like way beyond their heads, even for people who are bought into the idea of cryptocurrencies and blockchains. So really making a huge difference in terms of the user experience, like making it very, very simple for them so that they can understand what's going on, very aware of the risks and like why we believe in crypto and why it's better that these kind of products and experiences are much better relative to our traditional finance counterparts. The second part is, also actually security. I think there probably needs to be better standards around, who is doing audits, what are the expectations around audits, and sometimes there's the technical security. But given that we are building financial applications from the ground up, there are a lot of things that need to be considered in terms of financial exploits that a lot of people in TradFi consider, but maybe not as much within the DeFi world. So expanding the quality of audits, what's expected. When DeFi first came to the scene, it was probably understandable that people were just launching protocols without much thought for it. But 4 years later, it's time that we step back and actually look and understand what's at stake here. And then point 3, totally agreeing with Marco here, is regulation, right? I think until there is regulatory clarity in terms of what is allowed, what isn't allowed, it's going to really be an inhibitor to development and innovation in the space. And I think once regulatory clarity is here, both security and user experience are likely going to take a huge jump from there.
You touched on some really great topics of regulation and security, to name the two. I think to just start off with regulation, I'd love to just pick each of your brains a bit more, because you're also building on a very global scale, right? So Sid, I assume you're in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd love to get your take on where you're seeing in terms of regulations in the US, and to give the context for folks who are here. And Marco and Mike and Arjun, I'd love to hear about where you guys are based and how kind of geographically the regulations there are affecting how you're building, right?
Yeah. So, not to get too much into politics and whatnot, but if you look at like the current
US is all about politics.
Yeah, you can't really step away from that or hide from it. But if you look at like currently who's in charge with Gary Gensler, it seems like they have a very clear agenda that regardless of what the benefits to crypto are, they're going to be pointing a pretty bad picture of what actually is happening. They're going after smaller projects while they've let like SBF and FTX completely grow and blow up in kind of front of their face. So it's pretty clear that they don't have like the economy and innovation like as an importance for them. But regardless, there are a lot of individuals within Congress, within the White House, within other regulatory bodies like the CFTC that are putting in a significant amount of time to understand these things. They may be hesitant at first, but that's not stopping them from trying to understand more and pushing back against Gary Gensler and the White House's agenda and working to kind of establish clear ground rules so that people who are looking to participate in the space don't have to like leave the U.S. and that innovation is happening within the U.S. and that we're supporting the people that are helping build the next generation of financial infrastructure.
Yeah, Marco?
Yeah, I'm from Shanghai, China. And as I said, regulation is not my territory. So I'm also not the political man.
Yeah.
But I can share some thoughts about this regulation thing, that I think the first step towards that direction would be on-chain identity.
On-chain identity.
Yeah, like IDOS on NEAR, they do, like SBT, this NEP standards,
Yep.
to identify people, the real people behind the on-chain activity. Would be the first thing to do. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Douro Labs is based in Portugal, in the Douro Valley in Porto. And I'm an American. It wasn't that we moved. To Portugal because it wasn't a great environment. I was already living here. But I do think that there are certain headwinds in operating within a project, contributing to a network, and being based in the U.S. I agree with everything that Sid said. There's hope. There's a lot of cobwebs you have to get through first. So when you're building, you're a founder. You have to evaluate those all very seriously. Running afoul of any regulatory regime is going to be very difficult. The U.S. tends to view the world as its jurisdiction, and so I think making sure that the things that you do are going to be taken within consideration of what they may be worried about. That's how we approach things. And then just making sure that the network that we're contributing to is decentralized and is getting more decentralized. Our primary contributions are towards the Pith network, which is a Swiss-based organization similar to NEAR, the foundation. So there are certain things that are kind of like the tried, true, tested pathways for success. You can see projects that take the more high-risk approaches, and oftentimes those things don't work out well for them. So as long as you're kind of staying within the crowd, I think that's the best that you can do given the lack of clarity from a regulatory standpoint today.
I echo a lot of what you say there. Doing the best that you can do in a very uncertain or misty world is one of the most important pieces. Over at Orderly, we are 40 to 45 plus people across 10 plus countries. So battling different geos, different regulatory licenses and regulation is very tricky for us.
Yep.
The overall goal and vision for us at Orderly is to democratize finance, right? We want a completely permissionless protocol. We want a DAO with a full governance structure.
Yep.
That is the end goal for us, and we understand at the beginning or where we are right now that isn't quite how to do it. We have to operate as an entity, if you will. But the overall goal is to get towards that. So ensuring that we can work with our different partners, such as Ref, such as Pith, or whoever the different brokers that tap into Orderly, and provide them with as much detail and information on regulation is important to us. Which countries they should offer certain protocols to, which countries that they shouldn't, is very, very key, and we want to be able to provide that information. But overall, for us, being a very complete permissionless protocol in the future and democratizing finance is the end goal.
This is super helpful, and I think it's just really helpful to learn about what each of you are based and like how you guys are thinking, because everyone has such different opinions. But overall, it sounds like, unfortunately, U.S. is what we're looking at a lot of, and of course, Asia is just own animal, right? And you have a huge market there to tackle. Arjun, I'd love to start with you. Kind of talk about where are you most excited about when it comes to maybe top 1 or 2 kind of missing holes that projects are looking to fill in this space right now to really help accelerate, right? Especially in DeFi, especially in the near ecosystem. Where are you looking for when it comes to missing tools and projects that are looking to build and fill those gaps, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually wouldn't say there's anything directly missing, but there are key points that I think that are getting worked on and need to be worked on a lot more to bring DeFi to, let's say, mainstream adoption, if you will. I think onboarding is one of the most important, if not the most important piece. The user experience has to be so seamless. Chain abstraction, it has to feel like I think we very continually talk, especially in DeFi, about this Web 2 versus Web 3 battle.
Right.
And I just don't think it's a battle at all. I think there's a convergence of both of them. It doesn't have to be Web 2 versus Web 3. It can be Web 3 that feels like Web 2. Right? I think the onboarding experience has to feel like you can sign in with an email. Like I mentioned earlier, Fast Auth that Near has is a great tool. Different wallets that are now looking at account abstraction is like the next step towards that. And again, even like Near's BOS is a great place in terms of an operating system that looks and feels like an app store, and that will drive DeFi adoption without the feeling of what chain you're on, which bridge you're using, are you using wrapped assets, all of those pieces. So I don't think it directly answers your question in terms of what's missing, but these pieces in terms of the overall onboarding complex of what needs to be continued to work on, I think are critical.
Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with everything Arjun said in the fact that those are the things that are the most exciting, and they're going to have the highest impact in the short term. And so there's really no getting around that being the primary focus of what we should work on kind of in the short term. In terms of things that are like missing just generally from like the suite of DeFi, one thing that hasn't yet been cracked has been identity. In particular, the ability for identity to allow for non-fully collateralized loans. I think that's like something that even when we have DeFi as like full trading and full lending, but it's fully collateralized, we're still going to be missing a big component of it. So until we can get to that, partially collateralized set of DeFi primitives, we're going to still be a little bit behind. And the way that you do that is through identity. When you have some recourse on like a social security number or something like that, you can have some form of credit, because right now you can just throw away your wallet and create a new one. It's impossible to sort of track you. So that's something that I think will get done. I don't think it's around the corner, though. I don't think it's going to be happening in necessarily the next 6 months. But it is something that I'd like to see a lot of people working on. And there are approaches. Obviously, WorldCoin's got their approach.
I was just thinking about them. Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's a variety of others who are doing this through kind of more traditional means, using kind of government-issued IDs and kind of creating a tethered identity to that. So I think that's a very exciting area for all blockchains to work on.
For sure. Marco?
Yeah, I wouldn't say missing parts, but I would say there's actually some weakness part in the DeFi. So, I agree with Arjun. User onboarding, definitely is a weakness for DeFi, and but for this field, user onboarding on Near, actually we have some tools to mitigate this issue, like Arjun mentioned the Fast Auth, right? So basically we have 2 ways to do that. One is to have our users try our products first, and then handle those wallet issues later if they are willing to stay, right? So another way is to have our users to access our product with the tools they are familiar with. Yeah, that means for EVM users, right? They can access our products using MetaMask. That would be good.
Right.
Yeah.
They took all my answers, but kind of jumping on what like Mike said, I definitely think when it comes to capital efficiency, that's going to be a huge unlock for DeFi. And one piece of the puzzle definitely is identity and being able to have recourse beyond an anonymous address on chain. And I think another part of it is the type of assets. Right now, all the assets that are integrated in DeFi are very volatile and illiquid. So by nature, you have to have over-collateralization and very strong kind of risk standards across all these applications. But when you bring in traditional assets, whether it be equities, treasuries, or anything that exists in the traditional finance world, they're likely to be more stable and also significantly more liquid. So figuring out a way to bring those assets on chain in a regulatory compliant way, making sure the infrastructure and plumbing for that exists, would also enable us to do under collateralized lending in a way that doesn't exist in DeFi today. And I think that would be a huge unlock that the infrastructure exists, whether it be lending and AMMs or derivatives protocols. But right now, they completely operate within the scope of crypto assets, which is amazing. But if we really want to get it to the next stage, it needs to kind of figure out a way to integrate traditional finance assets within that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. We unfortunately only have one more question of time. So I'd love to just ask each of you to get some advice for founders who are building in the near ecosystem and DeFi in general. Right. I think DeFi, you guys have all started out in DeFi for quite some time now, and the DeFi landscape has obviously evolved a lot. But what kind of advice, maybe top 2 advice that you would give to the founders who are building today in the DeFi ecosystem, navigating, right? Just when they're coming from a finance background like Mike or someone who's an engineer, maybe Sid, if you don't mind sharing some advice for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one, as an entrepreneur, you probably want to be aware of market conditions, but at the same time, you don't want to be too drawn into it. Even though we are in a bear market and everyone talks about prices being down, if you look at the energy of the space and the fact that all of us are here, there are tons of people that are continuously building and to really rally around that energy and continue to try to build. Don't be afraid of the fact that it's challenging and that there are a lot of unknowns in this space that But we're really pushing the frontier here with DeFi projects, everything beyond crypto as well. So kind of take that energy and continue to push, and we'll get there sooner than later.
Yeah, for sure. Marco?
Yeah, I would say when you start to building something, don't pivot away easily, unless you think it through that there's something in your core design, core logic, something wrong. Yeah. Try to keep up with the market change.
Yep.
By upgrading your product or iterating. Because in that way, you will accumulating ecosystem confidence on your product, on your team, and even on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, advice for founders, I would say stubborn optimism is probably paramount. And then incremental growth. Having too large of an expectation will cause gaps, and that'll kind of reflectively hurt your optimism. Being able to talk to people about your idea, talk to potential projects that could integrate, that you can work with, is so valuable, and it just creates this network effect. And given how, what stage we're at in kind of crypto growth, everyone's working to try and make each other better. It's not yet the zero-sum world of Web 2. There's no giant behemoth gorillas. They're all sort of being kind of nurtured right now. And so everyone's very willing to help one another. So, finding a project to start with, iterating, staying open-minded, and just being optimistic.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with some of those, Mike. Like, being curious, I would say, is probably one of the most important pieces.
Yep.
Sometimes we can be far, far, far too dialed into what we're doing, that we don't see what's going on around us. Collaborating with each other, especially quote-unquote competitors, let's say. We are at the very, very early stages, like I said, of this multi-decade-long financial shift. The chance that you're right with your idea is slim to none. You need to be talking to as many people as possible, as many like-minded people, as many differently minded people, understanding how your idea can evolve as the technology evolves and as the market evolves. Your product will be completely different over a 2, 3, 4, 5-year period, and product market fit is going to take a lot of time as well. So being as curious as you can and talking to as many people as possible is probably my biggest advice there.
That's super helpful. And lastly, how do the audience here connect with you guys? What's the best way to learn more about your project or reach out to you if they have questions? Arjun, maybe you could start.
Check out our website, it's orderly.network. Check out our documentation, docs.orderly.network. And our Twitter is Twitter/orderly network. So lots of updates, lots of exciting things, and lots of partnership and collaborations coming up.
Awesome.
Pith.network for the website for Pith, and then on all the socials.
Yeah. By the end of this year, Ref will have the margin trading on the spot market.
Yep.
And we'll have a merge with DEX and a lending protocol to allow our LP liquidity provider to have their LP tokens take as a collateral to borrow assets out. And maybe next year we will release a stablecoin on it.
Oh, okay, very exciting. Sid?
Yeah, check us out at electriccapital.com. The team is working really hard to get the next developer report out. We put together a pretty comprehensive report every year on the state of developers across ecosystems, across geographic areas. So we're getting ready to launch the next edition of that. And I'll be at the Proximity Terrace if anyone wants to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for being here and giving us advice. Let's give it a round of applause for our speakers again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right.